you.
We'll call to order the regular Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, April 24th, 2012. We'll start with a invocation by Pastor Eric Mattson of the Cottonwood Bible Baptist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Baugh. Please stand.
All right, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we want to thank you in the name of Jesus Christ for the opportunity to be here this morning and be able to come before you. Lord, we thank you for your grace that you shed upon us on a daily basis. Lord, for watching over us, for your divine guidance. Lord, thank you for the beauty that we enjoy here in the county of Shasta. And Lord, for your creation. And just ask, Lord, that you would just bless now as we come to you, asking you for wisdom for our supervisors upon this meeting, that you would give them the wisdom that they need from above. Lord, we do pray that you give each one of them wisdom. David Kehoe, Leonard Modi, Glenn Hawes, Linda Hartman, and Les Baugh. Please, Lord, I pray that you would just give them that wisdom they need to make decisions based upon what is best for this county, not upon personal gain or anything that would be unfavorable for them personally, but Lord, what is best for the county as a whole. And Lord, we just ask now for your divine guidance upon this meeting, and we'll thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, as we remember those who are in service around the world today, would you join together with me as we pledge allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. We'll now move on to the public comment period. If you wish to speak, you can come forward and give your name. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. Pursuant to the Brown Act, action or board discussion cannot be taken on open time matters other than to receive the comments and, if deemed necessary, defer it to appropriate department for follow-up or future board agenda. I have one speaker at this time for open time. It's Randall Faulkner.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, supervisors, and taxpayers. Since my comments on the auditor's office 2 weeks ago, I've been accused by some of lying, and that the 3 adverse grand jury reports and the Rose Accountancy report on the auditor's office don't really exist. Please allow me to quote George Orwell. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Please allow me to be revolutionary. Let me inform the public where they can find these 3 grand jury reports investigating our auditor's office. All 3 reports are on the the Shasta County website. Go to the Shasta County homepage, click on the left-hand side under Hot Links, then on Grand Jury, then click Reports and Responses, then select 0102, 0304, 0809 Reports. 0102 report is entitled Shasta County Auditor Controller. The findings and recommendations are on pages 14 through 17. 0304 report is entitled Management Audit of the Shasta County Auditor Controller's Office. The findings and recommendations are on pages 14 through 18. 0809 report is entitled Watching the County's Money. The findings and recommendations are on pages 164 through 166. In contrast, the Rose Accountancy report is not readily available on the county's website, nor, to my knowledge, is it readily available in any form. Once citizens take the time to read certain sections of this report, they'll understand why the report went missing. I have a copy of the report, and I'll make it available via email in electronic format to anyone who'd like to read it. Last year, I asked for a meeting with my supervisor, Mr. Glenn Hawes. Mr. Glenn Hawes agreed to meet with me with Mr. Larry Lees present. After discussing a few other subjects, I asked Mr. Hawes what happened to the Rose Accountancy report, since it was addressed directly to him as the chairman of the Board of Supervisors at that time. Mr. Lees interrupted and refused to let Mr. Hawes answer the question. I asked the question a second time, only to have Mr. Lees interrupt again. I ask it again today, Mr. Hawes. What happened to the Rose Accountancy Report, and why is it not readily available to the public? In future board meetings, I'll specifically address some of the issues in these 4 reports, as most of them have not been addressed, and how they affected efficiency, effectiveness, and even fraud in our county. I'll also discuss in some detail the events that occurred during the 2010 campaign, like the 59-year-old Rotarian named Delbert Dooley, who I successfully sued for his repeated vandalism attacks of my political signs, and the fact that a number of the auditor's employees and 1 or 2 of their spouses were removed from a debate forum for disorderly conduct. I wish you all well, and until next time, good day and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. I have no more requests at this time. So we'll move on to our regular calendar, Board Matters R1. Consider recognizing Employment Services Supervisor Peggy Rickman. And is there someone going to talk to this item first?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman Modi, members of the board. I'm Melissa Jenilevich, Director for Regional Services with the Health and Human Services Agency. I would like to... Okay, how's that? Better? Still no? Okay. Raise the leg. Okay, testing microphone. Is that better? Okay, thank you. Okay, it's my pleasure to be here today to recognize one of our long-term employees. I would like to start with reading the summary from our board report that was submitted. Ms. Peggy Rickman began her career with Shasta County General Hospital as a food service worker on May 1st, 1983. In 1985, she promoted to the position of Vocational Instructor 1 for the Opportunity Center. Peggy was promoted to Vocational Instructor 2 in 1986 and then a Vocational Instructor 3 in 1987 and remained in this position until 1998 when she was promoted to the position of Employment Services Supervisor. Peggy has helped countless people with disabilities realize that they can achieve more than they thought they could. Throughout the years, she has been presented with numerous acknowledgments from employees, other departments, outside agencies, and people with disabilities, thanking her for her assistance, guidance, encouragement, and dedication to providing high-quality services. Peggy has also received many internal staff recognition awards, recognizing her customer service, quality, integrity, empowerment, responsibility, respect, and teamwork. Peggy has significantly contributed to the success of the Opportunity Center mission of developing productive and meaningful employment opportunities for people with disabilities. Peggy's a wonderful example of Shasta County customer service ethic and will be greatly missed in the Shasta County family. I have a couple other comments that I want to make about Ms. Rickman as well. I wanted to really call out Ms. Rickman's being a champion for customer service excellence. Customers at the Opportunity Center we define as organizations that contract for services that provide jobs for individuals with disabilities and include contracts for such things as janitorial service, groundkeeping service, mail sorting and processing, and recycling. The Opportunity Center has approximately 25 crews that are providing services to contracted customers every day. Ms. Rickman did an incredible job of communicating with the customers to ensure the services were meeting all expectations. She went over and above job expectations to make sure that the customers received excellent service and modeled this behavior with staff in her role as a supervisor. Ms. Rickman knew all the contracts, so she personally could fill in for other staff and supervisors and was gifted and at completing the daily staffing puzzle to ensure that all the contract obligations were met. I want to recognize and thank Ms. Rickman for her commitment to that excellent customer service. Finally, Ms. Rickman was best known for her strong work ethic. I would go so far to say it was her trademark. She was a public servant in the truest sense of the phrase, arriving early, staying late if needed, pitching in to help out wherever needed. She modeled this behavior also with staff and clients and was always striving to achieve excellence. Her coworkers tell me the best way to describe Ms. Rickman's approach to her work is to borrow a line from the comedian Larry the Cable Guy. And that line is, "Get her done." That's what Peggy does. I want to thank Ms. Rickman for her hard work every day, for giving 100% from the start of the day to the end of the day, from 1985 to 2012. On behalf of the Health and Human Services Agency and the Regional Services Branch, we congratulate Ms. Rickman on her retirement and hope that retirement will be a time of relaxing, enjoying, and having fun. May it be the start of something amazing. She deserves it.
Peggy, it gives me great pleasure on behalf of my colleagues to present you with this certificate of recognition, which reads, the Shasta County Board of Supervisors hereby recognizes and congratulates Employment Services Supervisor Peggy Rickman upon her retirement after more than 28 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Shasta County. Presented this day, 24th of April, signed by all my colleagues. And I just would like to say that on behalf of all of us here at Shasta County, that we are so blessed to have people like you who are so dedicated to providing the services to our citizens every day. As you mentioned, every day above and beyond for so many years, 28 years of service. It's outstanding. We're fortunate to have people like you. Thank you for all your dedication and hard work.
Oh, you're entirely welcome. I enjoyed every minute of it.
I'd like to say a few things.
I don't know what to say. Everything's already been said. I am a get-her-done kind of person, but I don't know, I just take pride in my work. My dad taught me years ago that you get things done, but do them the way they need to be done the first time so that you don't have to go back. So I tried to teach the clients and my staff that that's the way we needed to work within the county rules and regulations. So that was a job in itself. But anyway, thank you very much for the plaque. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, please take the same attitude into your retirement and go have a good time.
I'm trying.
Next item R2, take the following actions, conduct a follow-up discussion to the August 16, 2011 discussion regarding feasibility of entering into a tax sharing agreement with the cities of Reading, Anderson, and Shasta Lake. Consider selecting 2 supervisors to represent the Board of Supervisors and provide additional direction to staff. Mr. Lees?
Thank you, Chairman Modi, members of the board. As you recall, months ago, the board gave direction to go forward and contact the cities, asking them for their willingness to participate in an equitable tax sharing agreement discussion. They have since all responded that they would be interested in participating in such discussions. And so we would like to now ask that the board select a couple members of this board to represent Shasta County as it relates to that discussion. And we're going to start planning those meetings thereafter.
Mr. Kehoe.
Chairman Modi, I wish to thank you for bringing this important matter to our agenda. That was far-sighted of you to do that. I think everyone in this room this morning can agree on one thing, and that is that all of us in this room this morning, watching on television and in the general public, have an expectation that governments work together for the common good. Now, we now know that we have very little influence, if any, in Sacramento, because the folks down there act under the banner of self-interest and politics. But we can do things differently in Shasta County. All of us want good and effective infrastructure. We want outstanding public safety. We want good streets and roads, libraries, and the list goes on and on. But to provide for these requirements of all of the citizens takes money. So it is imperative that we all work together for this common goal. We must not allow ourselves to be shackled to past setbacks. What we must do is embrace a new vision for Shasta County, where the county and the three cities work together with mutual respect, trust, cooperation, and this must be the bedrock of our discussions. I'm fully supportive of this initiative, and if it requires a motion, I'm willing to make that motion, Mr. Chairman Modi.
Well, I think, thank you. I think what we're looking for is representatives from the board. The board previously established that we were willing to move forward with this, so I thank you for your words.
I would be pleased to serve on this committee if you so wish to appoint me.
That would that'd be
Well,
fine.
Mr. Chairman, I would make an appointment of you as chairman and Supervisor Kehoe to serve on the committee to discuss what we hope will be a very successful outcome in terms of tax sharing between the four entities in Shasta County.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Do we have any additional direction for staff at this time? Any other comments from anybody? Supervisor Hartman?
It might be of value, Chairman Modi, for Mr. Lees to suggest to us some timeline for engaging in these discussions.
Because of the action taken this morning, I will contact the cities this afternoon and we'll look for the next available dates. I am shooting for our first meeting to be within 2 or 3 weeks.
Very good. Thank you.
Supervisor Hartman?
Well, I'd like you guys, as you go into this, to take some guidance from Ms. Rickman and get her done.
Get her done.
Okay, great. We'll be moving forward then. Our next item is a presentation. Receive an update from Executive Director Vicki Panett regarding the status of the Sierra Sacramento Valley Emergency Medical Services System. I'm pleased to report that I do serve on this board with Ms. Panett. She's an excellent director. She's very well prepared. She's always on top of things, has the answers when we need them. I think you do an outstanding job running that organization, and we are very fortunate to be part of that. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman Modi and supervisors, and for the great introduction. Again, my name is Vicki Panett. I am the Executive Director of Sierra Sacramento Valley EMS, Emergency Medical Services. I'm here this morning to give you a brief overview of our agency, what our obligations are as the County Emergency Medical Services Agency, and sort of the accomplishments or the progress that we have made in Shasta County since Shasta County has joined our JPA. The role of an EMS agency, any EMS agency in the state of California, is a statutory obligation to ensure that the best possible care to the patient in the pre-hospital setting is provided. This is accomplished by many means. Establishing policy and treatment protocols, utilizing a committee process so that we have update from all of our providers in the field. Ensuring licensed and certified personnel are familiar with the system in which they operate and meet education and background requirements. Establishing response times to ensure that the patient receives the closest, most appropriate resource and is transported to the most appropriate facility. The most appropriate resource may not always be the closest. rather than a ground ambulance, an air ambulance may be more appropriate, or vice versa, depending on the condition of the patient. We must also ensure member counties have input in the process by establishing and attending meetings to discuss system improvements and concerns. We designate specialty centers and require committee peer review. We conduct annual ambulance inspections to ensure medications are current and adequate supplies are stocked. SSV staff also ride along in ambulances and with fire personnel to ensure that we as an agency are familiar with the system that we regulate. We open an office on Bocelli Lane in Reading. We currently have it staffed with 2.5 FTE. We felt this was the best way, in addition to our Rockland office, to ensure the counties in the north area that we serve, not just Shasta, but also Siskiyou, Tehama, and Butte and Colusa. We have a monthly paramedic accreditation class, which is held in Reading. This is for new paramedics into the system. It's an orientation class. We have a quarterly emergency medical advisory group that we call an EMAG, and it is to discuss what's going on in the system, some system improvements, get reports from the public health department, and just again to be sure that the people we work with, the providers, know what's going on with the SSV system. We will hold one JPA governing board meeting in Reading so far. We have 6 meetings a year. Most of them are held in Rockland. And as Chairman Modi pointed out, he does serve on our board. Our board has 10 supervisors, 1 from each member county, and myself and a council. We have adopted advanced EMT and emergency medical responder policies and protocols. We did not have these prior to the 5 counties that joined a couple years ago, because the 5 counties that we had served for many years did not have advanced EMT or EMT2s or emergency medical responders. We implemented these policies and protocols to serve our more rural counties. We formalized and stabilized the alternate transport vehicle program to ensure appropriate utilization of air ambulances. We do conduct a 100% audit of these air transports to ensure that they are appropriate. We have 2 EMT training programs in Shasta County, 11 CE continuing education providers, and 3 EMR programs to date. This is where we have our progress report, so to speak. The system improvements in Shasta County, we have designated trauma centers, Mercy Medical Center Reading, which is a level 2, Mercy Medical Center Mount Shasta, the level 3, and Shasta Regional Medical Center, also a level 3. All trauma centers have implemented the SSV Trauma Registry, which is a data system, and we use that to look at patients and do peer review. And it states we have reviewed by SSV staff. We have not reviewed them on the trauma level as of yet. Within 3 years, however, they will be required to meet the standards set by the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma. It's ACS-COT. And at that time, they'll be required to undergo a consultative visit. This is a standard of care really utilized not only just statewide in California, but also nationwide. And we require all of our trauma centers to go through this process. We conduct a Trauma Quality Improvement Committee. It meets quarterly to review the care of the trauma patients and review the data. Every trauma hospital in the SSV region attends this meeting. It is held in Reading because it's quality improvement, and we review patient charts. It is a closed meeting. As a government entity, most of the meetings in SSV are open to the public, and we do have agendas and meetings just as you do on our website. STEMI, which stands for ST Elevation, Myocardial Infarction, and Stroke Center Designation. These are specialty centers for the care specifically of these patients. This means that these 2 centers, Mercy Medical Center and Shasta Regional Medical Center, have met the standards and were reviewed by our staff and a specialist consultant that we hired to do the walkthroughs with us and look at the whole system. They meet the requirements for STEMI designation. They're specific for a certain type of cardiac patient. Years ago, these patients very often didn't make it to the hospital. they either died on the scene or they died shortly after arriving at the hospital. Because system improvements have included 12-lead EKGs, the ambulances, the paramedics on the ambulance can now transmit those to the hospital, and they can prepare for the arrival of those patients, and those patients are more likely than not saved, and they go home. So we designate those along with stroke centers. Stroke centers have to meet our requirement of Joint Commission certification as a primary stroke center. For disaster preparedness, we do control facility training. This is brand new to this region. A control facility was never designated prior to this year, frankly. We just did it with the training. Mercy Medical Center Reading will be a fully functioning control center facility by June of 2012. What this means for the patients and the providers is if there's a large multi-casualty incident such as a wreck on I-5, there's a number of patients, this will be implemented so the hospital will pull other hospitals in the entire region and determine patient disbursement so that all the patients don't end up in one hospital while another hospital sits empty wondering where are all the people. We have also implemented the Region 4 MCI plan. We are in Region 3 up here, but they have a special part of the plan in Region 4 that Region 3 does not have. So ongoing, or things we still need to work on, all those things I mentioned before are always ongoing, but we are trying to establish response time standards in Shasta County. It has been a little more difficult than we anticipated, simply because there are a number of different sources for response time data, and we need to compile those all into one. So it's a little bit more difficult than we anticipated, but we will get there. We need to ensure the closest available ambulance is dispatched to the patient. SHASCOM has already started that process by implementing automated vehicle locators into every ambulance in the system so that they can see where they are and to ensure that the closest ambulance gets to the patient regardless of whose zone it is. And again, integrating the system data. Additionally, every year we hold an EMS Appreciation Day during EMS Week, which is in May. This year we will have two, one in Placer County and one in Shasta County in Anderson. Unfortunately, I forgot the flyers. I did send them out to my board, and Supervisor Modi does have one. I'm pretty excited about this. It's the first time we held an EMS Day up here. It is for the providers in our system. The board, of course, is welcome to attend. We do provide free CE for anyone attending the lectures. And then we do a continental breakfast. We have the CE. Then we do an awards luncheon where providers may send to us nominations, and then we have a committee that chooses paramedics, dispatchers, law enforcement, flight nurses, anyone in the whole realm of EMS to receive awards, and we have a barbecue as well for them. We do have apparatus arriving and helicopters, so I'm sure it will be a really great event. We've always had a great deal of fun with it in the past. So I encourage you to look at our website for more information. Again, our board meetings are open. Next one is May 11th here in Reading, and you are certainly welcome to attend or listen in. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Chair Modi. I just want to say that what a perfect, no-nonsense, straightforward approach and presentation. It's pretty obvious probably to the board members here, certainly, but to those in the audience when we received past presentations in our former relationship, not with you, prior to your allowing us to become a part of this agency. Quite a 180 from our past experience. I just want to thank you. You have accomplished a lot in 2 years, and it's all for the benefit of our residents. I'm very appreciative. I would like to actually ask the question of Chair Modi, if you can confirm that what I'm saying is true, that we are completely in a positive direction with this agency, and that everything that we'd hoped for has been accomplished.
Thank you. Supervisor Hartman wanted me just to remind you again, you have the flyer and to Just a reminder again, it's on May 23rd, which is a Wednesday from 9 to 3. It's in the Anderson River Park in Anderson. So a great location. Like I said, we'll be able to bring in helicopters and have
Yes.
a great setup for that. And I just wanted to have you talk a little bit. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, it looks pretty smooth on the outside, but we do know that there are some difficult parts. I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with a number of different agencies in any of the counties, like the hospitals and the transportation agencies and stuff, there are all the rules and regulations that come along with EMS service and stuff. But if you could speak a little bit to how you go about working with these agencies to get to solutions in the end.
Mm-hmm. Well, the answer is we work with the agencies. Although we are a regulatory agency, and that is our job, we do work with the agencies to learn the system in which they operate, because there are idiosyncrasies in every county that may be different from Placer or Butte, and we work with those providers to learn the system before we attempt to make any changes. If we make changes at all, we have made changes. Clearly, there's always a transition, and it may be a struggle. I was surprised and pleased that the transition did not take as long as I anticipated. It was not as difficult as I anticipated. I always anticipate the worst when making a transition to new providers, new fire departments, new dispatch center, everything new, and all the providers have to learn the way that SSV operates and what our expectations are. However, I think they were ready for change, and for the most part appreciative. There are always some challenges, and we did have a few of those, but I believe that when you get the input from the providers, it makes an enormous difference. And I think, and I would hope, that most of them are pleased with the way we are operating now. The committee that sets the policy and protocol under how they operate is very, very well attended, and they do bring a lot to the table, and we do listen. So.
Well, I think that's what is exemplified by what I've seen as well, is there are always issues that come up, but I've been impressed by the fact that the agency led by you makes a real point of sitting down and working out the issues and getting it done without having to use the regulatory hammer, so to speak. It's more like a cooperative venture, and I think that's why you do so well, and your agency does so well with all the hospitals. And as you mentioned, all the counties have different issues. I mean, Siskiyou has, just like we do, I mean, they're more rural and more stretched out. They have issues as well, and Butte does, and it's that constant working to make it right. And the last thing I'd just like to say is, we changed from our previous EMS provider mostly at the time for financial reasons, but in reality, we got the best of both worlds. Financially, it's still a good deal for us, but what we got is a program that's really light years away of where we were before, and moved, I think, our county so far forward to where it was. And so I really do congratulate you on your efforts down there. And if you just would leave us with you mentioned the board meeting here in Reading. Once a year will be in Reading. It is coming up in May, and it's going to be at their office.
It will be at our office on Bocelli Lane at 1 p.m. Again, you can listen in. You can't participate, of course, if you listen in, but it is going to be there at 1 p.m. It's scheduled from 1 to 3, but we usually don't take that long. So it's an open meeting. I encourage our providers to attend as well. Although our providers participate very well in our committees, it's at a little bit different level, and they would get an opportunity to see how the administration of our agency really works.
So I certainly would offer the invitation to my fellow board members, if you'd like to take a chance to see the operation of this board, it'd be a perfect time versus traveling to Rockland, which is
right.
A trip.
It is.
Any other questions for Ms. Pinette?
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you for taking the time to come up here today.
Absolutely.
Our next item will be to receive a monthly progress report from Chief Probation Officer Wes Foreman regarding our AB 109 Public Safety Realignment progress.
Good morning, Chairman Modi. If you'll just give me just a few seconds to make sure that this...
Yeah, take your time.
All right.
Chairman Modi, members of the board, my name is Wes Foreman. I'm the Chief Probation Officer. And today I will be presenting a progress update on public safety realignment, commonly referred to as AB 109. The numbers that I will be presenting to you today are as of 3/31, so we're a little bit behind, but in order to collect the numbers, we go from month to month. So this current numbers are through the end of March. Currently, the probation department is supervising 258 realignment offenders. One of the concerns we had was whether or not the offenders were actually going to show up on our doorstep after they were released from their prison facilities, and I'm happy to report that 96% of them do show up for their appointments. We also have an 81% compliance rate, and what that means is that only 19% of the current offenders that we're supervising are in some form of revocation status. And another number that corresponds or goes along with that is that we track recidivism in probation, and the recidivism is defined by those that have been convicted of new crimes, either a misdemeanor or a felony. And of the 258 realignment offenders we are supervising, there is currently only a 2% new crime recidivism rate. This report on our compliance team, and just to give a little bit of history on the compliance team, we do expect that some of the offenders we're supervising will not comply with their terms and conditions and will need some kind of support from our law enforcement partners. So the Community Correction Partnership executive team decided that forming a compliance team would help in that process. So if somebody is out of compliance in a little bit more serious way, then we'll call up our partners and we'll make extra searches. This month we've added 11 new contacts, actual contacts, 22 new attempted contacts, and attempted contacts is trying to go to a home and they're not home. We haven't been able to make the contact. We put those on the list or keep them on the list and go back and check on them. 13 new full searches were done in March, and 4 new arrests were done in March. The compliance team, as of note, this year was primarily handled through paying overtime to the sheriff deputies and the police officers. Next year, we intend to have these officers as full-time staff. In regards to opening the 3rd floor of the jail, the first bullet there's no change since the last report. The vacant floor is prepared and ready. It's the recruitment process that's slowing things down, and the sheriff has given us the anticipated date as this summer of being open. A slide later on in the presentation will show that he has actually made progress in some of his recruitment. The expanded work release program is a program to help us with the current overcrowding problem in the jail. It's listed as an alternative to custody. Although they still get custody credits, it is a program that allows to free up space within the jail and gives us a little bit more room to manage the offending population in Shasta County. And I'm reporting here 179 people are currently on the work release program. The mandatory home electronic confinement program is another custody alternative program. We initially funded that or identified funding for 100 offenders. We have 100 devices that we can strap around offenders' ankles to help monitor their whereabouts. We are currently at a 50% level, and that is due to our ability to provide staff for that. We're still in the recruitment process. Currently, we have 32 in that program. The progress towards finding a location for the assessment center is still ongoing. In regards to services, one bit of data that we're collecting is the number of referrals to mental health and alcohol and drug services. Currently, from the population that we're supervising, 123 assessments have been completed. Of those 123, 81 have been assessed to need services. And as you can see with the percentages below that, the majority of the service need is for alcohol and drug services. Another component of the realignment plan is to assess individuals for their need for public assistance. These numbers represent that 115 applications have been done. 101 applications have been approved. In regards to general service assistance, 74 inquiries have been made, and there are 24 ongoing general assistant cases. This is a slide I mentioned before in regards to the recruitment progress that's been made by the sheriff. In the last report, recruitment was ongoing only. Currently, there is one correction officer hired, and the sheriff is waiting for the ranking of 26 applications that affects both the jail and the work release program. And oral interviews for the public safety officers is also scheduled. The mental health and social service employees that are working for the services for the mental health clinician and the eligibility workers, that has been ongoing. In the probation department, we've also made a little bit of progress, but recruitment is continuing. This slide just represents the funding. This year we were expected to receive $2.9 million. We're still expecting to receive that, and currently we've received 58 or 59% of those funds. So we are on track to receive it as we expected. The next slide, the next bullet refers to what we initially anticipated receiving for second year funding, $6.9 million. The number below that, in parentheses, is a current adjustment of what we expect that to be. Right now, at the state level, they are reevaluating the formula that would distribute the money to the counties. And at this point, they're only saying that they're going to provide twice the amount of money that received in the first year. So it's twice the amount of $2.9 million, and that equates to a $5.9 million. That is somewhat less. Obviously, $1 million less than what we anticipated due to the recruitment problems, some salary savings in other areas that we still anticipate being able to fund the services that we desire. I left the numbers for the third and fourth years in there, but I put a question mark at the end of those because those numbers are still up in the air. What you can anticipate in the future, number one is I'll be back here with another update in May. Sometime before the end of June, myself and my colleagues from the Community Correction Partnership will be presenting a new updated plan. We'll also present a spending plan that will go along with that for the next fiscal year. We hope to renew the spending authorization, which is a small level for the Chief Probation Officer to provide services as needed. And we want to extend the staffing sunset that originally was placed for the end of June for 1 year in the future. And that ends the presentation, and I'll be willing to answer some questions.
Any questions for Mr. Foreman? Mr. Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. Mr. Foreman, Chief Foreman, thank you for the presentation and continuous updates. Well received. The 96% show rate is encouraging. Could you walk us through, however, what happens to the 4%?
The 4% is largely those, or it is all of those that fail to show up for their initial appointment with the probation department. And so we immediately investigate why. So we have some information about where they anticipated to reside. So we'll check all of those contacts that we can, and then immediately issue a warrant and revocation proceedings.
So some of them end up being arrested again, and then what happens to those who are arrested?
Well, then they have to go back to the court system. The court makes a decision on what to do with them, then reinstates their supervision with us, puts them in custody for revocation, depending on what the court wishes are.
And if they are remanded back to jail, is that local jail or is that back
Yes,
to the
it is.
state prison?
It's local jail.
And do they stay in jail or are they released because of our overcrowding?
The sheriff would have to answer that question.
Okay, fair answer, fair answer. On the home electronic confinement program, the 50% cap, when do you anticipate being able to increase that? I know you said you were in the middle of hiring and recruiting.
We're hoping to have all the staff hired by the summer, so within a couple of months, so that we can boost that up to its full capacity.
And then the big non-surprise is the state anticipating actually giving us less than they thought they'd give us. I don't think anybody on this board or in the room is surprised at that. And yet the order of the day seems to be the word flexibility. You seem prepared for that. How is it that we can be prepared to receive $1 million less than anticipated and still make it work?
First of all, I want to say that the money that has been identified from the state, the large pocket of funds that's coming to the counties has not changed. Now, it may change with the governor's push for his initiative and to try to put some constitutional guarantees on that. So we're still waiting that. But the allocation formula that I'm talking about is there's representatives from each of the counties that are now determining how that formula is to be distributed to the counties. And some of the larger counties who have already had services to provide to work with this population and sent less to prison are now saying that they should have been rewarded for more money, and so they want to change the formulas out so that they get a bigger pot of it and send less to those. And unfortunately, Shasta County is a county that did not have resources in the beginning, sent a large amount of offenders to prison. Not that they didn't deserve it, but we are one of those counties that send a lot of people to prison. Our argument is that we should be receiving those initial realignment funds, because if we're going to actually make a difference, protect the community by giving them opportunities to change their thinking pattern and not commit crimes, then we need those resources. So the debate is that kind of debate. The pocket of money is not less, it's just how the formula is going to be divided up for the counties. And then in response to how we're going to manage less money if it's coming in, first of all, that formula has not been decided. But with pressure that we have been placing on those that are creating the formula, what can we expect? They said, well, at least you can expect twice this amount. Okay, now the formula is still being debated, and there could be more than the $5+ million that I talked about. But I mentioned earlier that recruitment was difficult this year, so we do have some salary savings. What we hope to do from the Community Correction Partnership Committee is to take those resources and pool them and put them together, those savings together, so that we can fund the programs that are planned, designed to fund in the initial outgo, so that we can fund those fully in the next year. So those salary savings will help us get through and make up that difference.
Chief, thank you for your responses and your determination to protect the public.
Thank you.
Mr. Keogh.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Good morning, Mr. Foreman. Thank you for your presentation. As most of us in this room know, there is a substantial amount of community angst over this program. And so my questions will be directed at our accountability on a local level. Now, Supervisor Baugh asked some questions relative to the first slide, namely the 96% show rate. Why don't we equate the percentages to numbers? So how many people didn't show up?
Well, I don't have the actual numbers with you, but we have 258 individuals that we're supervising, so it's a very small number.
Okay. Well, for our May presentation, I would be very much interested in knowing what the specific numbers are on the show rate, and then we say 81% are in compliance, so I'd like to know what the other 19% equates to as far as numbers. and then we say 2% for new crime recidivism, that equates to 5 offenders, right?
Yes, I was going to say 6. That is a number, an actual number that I do have.
Okay.
So 6 of those 258 have actually been convicted of a new crime.
And what type of crimes have they been convicted of?
Either misdemeanor or felony. I don't have the actual, like, for instance, a petty or a theft or an assault. I don't have those.
Okay, maybe we could do that for our next. Now, you mentioned the compliance team on the second slide. Is that team different from the oversight committee?
The compliance team is a group of law enforcement individuals. It is different than the oversight committee.
Okay. And just for the benefit of those in the audience today, let's name the people on the oversight committee, or at least their positions.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this from memory for you. The chief probation officer is the chair. We have the sheriff, the police chief of Reading Police Department. We have a representative from the board, Marta, from the Health and Human Service Agency. We have the district attorney's office represented, the district attorney, and the public defender. And there should be 7. Did I remember? Did I? Presiding judge. Okay, and a representative from the courts.
Courts. Okay. For our future presentations, I would be interested in hearing from some of these people and what their take is on how we're progressing with the implementation of AB 109. I have one other question, and it's relative to the assessment center, day reporting center. We indicate that we're still looking for a site right now. Where is the assessment and day reporting for the 258 people now being done?
At the probation department. So all the offenders are reporting to the probation department right now.
Okay.
And what we, ideally what we would hope to do is we have a separate center for this population where these offenders would report to another location. That assessment center would have a collection of county and other program agents that would be in that center that would do everything from the initial assessment of the offenders and then provide some services. And within that center, then we want to, for a select 50 that need, are extra needy, that we would want to have a day report center that those individuals would be reporting daily and be provided programming and such.
When do you anticipate defining the location of the assessment center and day reporting center, and then what's the target date for getting it up and running? I guess the second would be predicated on the first, obviously.
The company that we've hired to do the day report center and the assessment center and putting county staff in there could happen almost immediately. Okay. But the day report center that would be inside it, the company that we hired, it needs at least 60 days to get up and running. So once we find the location and manage the contract, then 60 days would be the minimum for that part of it. The location ideally would be downtown, close to the courthouse. We've looked at several sites. The anticipated square footage is 5,000 to 6,000, would cover the day report center and the other individuals that we expect to have in the center. And part of the difficulty is locating that size of a facility. Or now we're looking in terms of spaces that we could be close enough together that we could provide instead of being in the same one-stop area, that it would be walking across the street or walking upstairs or downstairs or that kind of thing. We have had some communication with the city in terms of location. We want to be very sensitive to all the elements and the impacts of everyone around. That has complicated our search, but you know, that's what we're looking for.
One final question, please. So, as I understand what you're saying, we will be staffing the assessment center.
That's correct.
With county employees, trained county employees.
Probation officers will be in the center. There will be other county partners that would either be stationed there permanently, let's say our mental health clinician and the eligibility workers that are currently working with us right now, that they come down 2 or 3 times a week to the probation department. We hope to have them in that assessment center with us. And there could be other partners that would have spaces to, chairs to sit in, desks to work with clients that would be showing up at the center as well. So there could be some temporary spacing for that.
So let me ask the obvious question then. If we're doing the assessment center, why are we contracting out the day reporting center?
Well, the day reporting center programming that they do is not something that the county employees do. So it's special. It's special oversight and program planning and services to those individuals, such as providing for helping them find jobs. If they need anger management, they can do anger management programs, some special cognitive behavioral programs. So special needs that are assessed for these individuals, these group are the specialists that handle those services. It's for a special group and it's specialized services that we don't do.
Thank you.
Mr. Baum?
Just as a follow-through on Supervisor Keogh's questions, I would be interested in seeing a list of responsibilities that would be required for the day reporting center. I think that would be helpful. And can you assure us at this point, I know this has been forced upon us by the state of California, and we have a great working group that is handling this. Can you assure us up as to this point that we, meaning Shasta County, are doing everything we can to assure the public that we are being protective and handling this in a very responsible way?
As soon as the words public safety realignment entered the media stream, then the public became real concerned about the offenders that are in our community. And I have made several presentations in hopes of trying to dispel some of those concerns with individuals. First of all, the individuals that the county is now supervising are the same individuals that have been in our community all along. These individuals were convicted of a crime, sent to prison, served their time, came out on parole before. Now they're coming out to community supervision, to the probation department. Those individuals were in our community. Now they were reporting to the parole officer instead of the probation officer, but there's only that difference, okay? Now the numbers that we expected, we anticipated that through the end of June we would receive about 420 new offenders for us to supervise. We are pretty close into that target, with 258 through the end of March. We might be a little bit under that target. So the number that we anticipated is a little less. And with the numbers that we're sharing in terms of some of the concerns, will they report from prison to us so they can be supervised? The number showing up is large. There's this very small number that are ignoring that responsibility, and then we have to issue warrants and try to find. The big number that I like to represent is our recidivism number. Right now it's at 2%. It is early, I want to say. We're only 6 months into this, okay? So you haven't had a lot of time for those offenders to get bored or whatever causes them to commit crimes. But right now, the recidivism number that all of the state of California tracks is the number of convictions, subsequent convictions under our supervision. That number is still very small. It's only 2% at this point. And so, I hope to present those numbers in a way to say that yes, we need to be concerned about the offenders being in our community. The probation department is a responsible agency that can provide that supervision. We've partnered well with the sheriff and the police departments and all the other community agencies within the system, including providing services and treatment through the primarily our county partner, the Health and Human Service Agency. So we're providing all those things, and at this point I believe that we're doing a very good job with a difficult situation.
I would agree with you, and the 2% recidivism rate compares very well to, say, the figures we've heard in the past of 70, 78%. So thank you again, Chief.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the report. Mr. Kehoe?
I had one final question. To give us the big picture, and maybe you're not in a position to do this, but how many people in Shasta County are on parole and on probation? Can you give us any idea?
And I can tell you about the probation numbers. We, in regular, what we call felony probation, so before realignment, probation was supervising close to 2,000 offenders on probation. So this realignment population has added currently from October another 258 for us to supervise on top of that. And I do not know the parole numbers.
If it were a matter of conjecture on the parole numbers?
You would not want to even speculate. So.
Where can we get that figure?
Well, you know, perhaps I can get that. The parole office has been responsive. They show up for many of our meetings themselves to help with information. So that's a number that I'll try to track down for you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman.
Thank you, Chief. Next item of business, our consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. I have a request from Supervisor Kehoe to remove item C16, and I have a request from the public to remove item C4. Are there any other requests?
Chair Modi, I was not in attendance when items C4, C5, C6, and C7 were discussed at the prior meeting. I was happily with my son, my 31-year-old son, in his wedding week out of state. So as such, I must abstain from voting on those this week.
Okay. So with the remaining items, is there a motion? I'll move for approval. Second. Motion and second to approve the remaining items. Discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to item C4. Mr. Cadd, you wanted to speak to this item? Mr. Cadd, you wanted to speak to this item?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff, ladies and gentlemen, come forward. This is a continuation of an issue that we brought forward here some time ago to make some changes in county government. I'm going to be speaking from a document that I found. It's California State Government Guide to Government from the League of Women Voters of California. It's about county government, an overview of the function and structure of county governments and descriptions of major departments and officials. And I will move forward in this document to the county government administration. What is a county chief administrative officer, county manager, and the county executive? The chief administrative officer is appointed by the Board of Supervisors in most counties in the state. This officer is responsible for implementing board decisions, preparing board budgets, and carrying out studies to provide supervisors with information needed to make decisions and generally coordinating county administration. Although the county officer is often called county manager or a county executive, there is a legal distinction. Only charter counties may establish the position of county manager or executive. And in these cases, the officer has more authority than a chief administrative officer, who is essentially the agent of the Board of Supervisors. It's my comment that what you're doing today in changing Mr. Lee's from a CAO to a CEO doesn't fit under the general law. It fits under California Code for Charter Counties. So I think what's going on today is shouldn't be done, number one. And then number two, with what we came forward asking to have certain portions of the Public Works Director and the Resource Director put under Mr. Lee's, and then those hats, if you will, or those positions they have that fit under state law that have to be under the board, leave them under the board. Then that way, when people in the community need to talk to these two individuals, these two positions, then they can go to Mr. Lees, and Mr. Lees can set a meeting up and move forward. Because my understanding, this has not been happening in the county in the recent past, some distant past. So that's the reason why I come forward, and from my contention is that you cannot move. You can call Mr. Lees almost anything you want to, and excuse me for saying that, Mr. Lees, but well, I mean, in essence, you can call him a county manager, county executive, you can call him whatever title you want to fit. But under general law, it's a CAO, and you can't call him a CEO, Chief Executive Officer. Thank you.
Mr. Cruz, would you care to address that issue?
Certainly. The board may recall that we had a lengthy discussion on February 27th concerning the delegation of authority to Mr. Lees, and for ease of reference, I'll refer to him as a CAO. Apparently my time is up. So
And thank you for your response.
Pay by the minute, yeah. We had that discussion at that time. To refresh the board's memory, the board can certainly establish Mr. Lees as a county administrative officer, which is allowed under the code, and the county is also authorized under the California Constitution to establish other county offices that, to the extent you're not inconsistent with state law. The board can certainly call, as indicated by Mr. Cadd, the board can certainly identify that office as being a county executive officer or a county administrative officer or some other title. In fact, Napa County has an officer identified as the county executive officer, and that's a general law county. So there's nothing illegal about calling Mr. Lees the county executive officer. The key question is the duties that he has. And as explained at the February 27th meeting, the duties that are indicated in there are the ones that are appropriate for Mr. Lees, as whether we call him a county executive officer or a county administrative officer. The primary distinction that exists between a general law county and a charter county, as indicated by Mr. Cadd, is that when you're dealing with what are called the other statutory county offices, for example, the Public Works Director, which is a combined consolidated office of the road commissioner and the surveyor, or in the resource management director, who also holds a county office as the director of environmental health, and there are various other ones as well. When the law says that when the legislature has said that the Board of Supervisors will appoint those people, then the board is not authorized to delegate that appointing authority to a county executive officer or county administrative officer. And that's where we're at today. The board has not changed that. Those positions are still appointed by the board upon the recommendation of the CAO, which of course is lawful as well. The board is allowed to delegate to the CEO the other positions that are not county offices. For example, we have the Director of Community Action Program is identified in the law as not being a county officer. And there are several others, the Intermountain Fair Manager, the Veteran Service Officer, the Chief Technology Officer, and the Director of Support Services. Since they're not county offices, they can be appropriately delegated to the County Executive Officer for appointment. As far as county officers go, again, as I said, the board has the authority to appoint those, and that remains in place. The board can consider the recommendations from the CEO in that regard. And the board can also delegate to him the supervisory authority, to the extent that the idea being that we expect them to faithfully perform their duties. CEO give us, report and supervise them to ensure that they are faithfully performing their duties. That's already in the existing county code. And if there are concerns, that can then be brought back to the board for consideration and whatever action. The key there is that the final decision-making authority, the policy decision, whether to keep someone or not, stays with the board. A charter county gives the board much more flexibility. A charter county, for example, allows you to delegate to the CAO appointment of various county officers. For example, Santa Clara County, for example, has only 8 elected positions: the 5 board members, the sheriff, the district attorney, and the assessor. Pretty much everyone else is either then appointed by the board or by the county executive officer in that county pursuant to that county charter. So that's a question, again, of a policy for the board as to whether or not that's something you want to do or otherwise. Again, I'm not in a position to, I'm not recommending one way or the other. I'm just saying that's the difference between a county charter and a general law county. As far as changing job assignments around, again, the key factor there would be, for example, with Mr. Minturn out, I apologize for mentioning people specifically, but the Public Works Director, he has been appointed to be the road commissioner and the surveyor. If there are other duties that are not related to that, that could be legitimately separated, and again, I'm not saying there are, they're not, but if there are such, then the board could conceivably do a reorganization to put various duties and assignments under some other department or not. But I hope that helps clarify some of the issues concerning what Mr. Catt has said today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Just two things. One, if I heard you correctly, you said that the duties that we're suggesting today are appropriate under a general law county.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. And the second thing is, it was mentioned, although I have all respect for the League of Women Voters, it mentioned their pamphlet and something that was in there. It sounds to me perhaps it just wasn't in enough detail to explain what the difference was between a charter and general law as far as a CEO.
Yes, I mean, I believe I have not looked at the particular pamphlet, but I think it probably what is just trying to give a general shorthand summary of trying to explain the nuances between a charter and a general law county.
That's what it sounds like to me. And then the last thing I just like to comment, there was mentioned that wanting to have a meeting with a department director and Mr. Lees, and that's not been happening. I found that anytime anybody's asked Mr. Lees to have a meeting with somebody, including with the director, he's been very responsive and more than willing to set up that meeting with anybody in the public. So if that's not happening, then please let me know. But I know that Mr. Lees has been forthright with having meetings with anybody who wants to meet with him and a director. Any other discussion from the board? Seeing none, I'll look for
You have one.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Keogh. My apologies.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Pursuant to the answers that you have received for the questions that you have posed to County Council, I move approval of item C4.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Baugh?
Yeah, under discussion, directed to CAO Lees at the moment. What's in a name? What's in a name? I know that I've heard you say that you just want to get the job done. Just overview of what we're doing here. What's the goal with the changes that we're making here today? I know I could have left you alone, but I just can't do it.
Well, you know, you're asking me a question as if I was the one who recommended it, and I did not.
That's correct.
And so now I could tell you what I believe is the overall goal here, because although there has been some changes in the ability to better bring to the level of the public who I supervise directly and don't. I think that's one of those goals and objectives have we reached. The other goal I think that's out there is there's some misconceptions about the person responsible for the county. In that city managers, most folks know that are involved, they know what a city manager's role is, they know what a city manager does. You ask the average person on the street what a county administrative officer does, they don't know. And there's some confusion around that. People know what a CEO does. They know the chief executive officer is in control of the corporation or the business or the county. And so I think in reality, whereas it doesn't, the title itself does not change any level of my authority. A couple of the other things we did do. But the title itself doesn't change any level of authority. I think it paints a better picture for the public to clearly understand my role. And with that, it paints, I think, a clear picture to those people, department heads and directors that also work here within the county. And I think that's really the true message, is to be more transparent, be more clear, take away questions and concerns that the public might have. It absolutely takes no authority away from the Board of Supervisors as it relates to my title. I mean, there has been a discussion, well, now, you know, this is different, or, you know, they can't be your boss anymore. And that's just not absolutely not the case. There is no difference at all in the level of authority that this board, unfortunately, that this Board of Supervisor has over me. And so I think it's, it's more of what I say there.
Thank you, Mr. Lees.
And I think maybe the other follow-up from Mr. Cruz was there were some questions about it would then somehow limit our ability to hire or fire the CEO, that he had far more protections now as the CEO versus the CAO. And I don't believe that's true, but I'd like you to just speak to that.
The short answer is no, that doesn't change at all. Under the ordinance as it existed before and as it exists now before the board, he serves at the pleasure of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Mr. Catt, I see you shaking your hand. I would just request that if you think that there is, that you bring forth some citations to bring to County Council, and he'll be happy to review those. But he certainly doesn't believe that there is. I tend to agree with him. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And please note for the record the abstention as required for me. Thank you.
Next item is C16. It's the annual financial aid contract with the California Department of Boating and Waterways. Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Ladies and gentlemen, this agenda item contemplates signing an agreement with a contract with the California Department of Boating and Waterways not to exceed $584,990. And down at the bottom of page 1 indicates that the Sheriff's Department will provide 9 patrol boats stationed on Shasta Lake, 1 on the Sacramento River, 2 staged at the Sacramento River for rescue purposes, and 1 in Bernie for primary patrol purposes. And then let's move over to the section relative to financing. And Mr. Lees, I'm going to ask you this question. Indicates that the expected revenue and offsetting appropriations for the boating safety unit are included in the Sheriff's Office requested budget for FY 2012-13, and then they are delineated as follows. Boating safety state financial aid will fund 70.8%. That equates to $584,990 of the total requested appropriations. The estimated boating property tax allocation is 13.8%. General fund is 10.2%, which equates to 84,220. Prop 172 safety fund is 4.7 or $38,913, and then federal excise tax reimbursement at 0.5% or $4,000. So in the staff report, we indicate that the Sheriff's Department has certain responsibilities providing services and protection, public safety protection on the Sacramento River. Now, as we all know, the Sacramento River flows through the course of the city of Redding down to Anderson. So my question to you is, it seems like we are embracing $127,113 worth of costs, and consistent with our earlier discussion on the tax sharing agreement, have we engaged in any discussions with the city of Redding and the city of Anderson to see if they hold an interest in perhaps offsetting these costs that the county is absorbing?
The short answer is yes, we have. The reason I'm smiling a little bit is because there's what I call the Lee's famous graphs. And I paint these graphs on the board when I met with the city managers. And this was a year ago or so when we first started tax sharing. And because we have chosen to accept the waterways grants, we are responsible for the boating and the waterway safety throughout all of Shasta County, which is fine. The point I make with the cities is that, however, because it costs more than that, and as you pointed out, this particular year we're looking at it being somewhere around $127,000 more that we will have to subsidize the patrol. I believe, whereas the cities should not be participating in that 584,000 portion. They certainly should have and be paying their share of that 127,000, that number that is above and beyond. Keep in mind that most of the tourism and most of the benefits that come from the river as it relates to income, that would be sales tax and that would be TOT, hotel tax. Most of that flows directly to the cities. The county does not get TOT for houseboats. It's illegal. And of course, we have very few major hotels or motels in the unincorporated part. So I easily make this argument that the cities ought to be paying for not any of that 580, but certainly that 127,000 more that it's costing us, that actually ought to be a share of. I look at that as our contribution to tourism, our contribution to economic development, because if we can't maintain proper and safe waterways, we're in trouble here. But I do believe it is fair that they participate. Now, I will, that is just one example, because that's what we're talking about today. We could use that same example with the jail. I mean, here we have, we're spending what, $20 million? No, excuse me. We're spending $13, $14 million on jail. We get public safety funds for that. We get state jail funds for that. We get dollars, and that is our responsibility as a county to be in charge of the jail. But I draw the same graph with the jail, whereas nobody should be paying any part of that which we get from the state to cover incarcerations. But because it is costing us more, you have this other 30% more that is costing us. That's the part that I think we should be having everyone participate in as it relates to their level of incarceration. And so it's an easy argument to make. It's not one that's real popular. And so what we do is we brought up the tax sharing, and that's why I think, and I see this discussion coming out again in our tax sharing discussions, whereas, hey, we're not asking you to give us something that you're not receiving services for. We're asking you to share with payment that you are actually receiving services for directly, and it's helping your sales tax, it's helping your TOT, et cetera. So you started me off there, and I know you wanted just probably a short answer, but I felt compelled to share it with you. It's been very personal to me since I've been CAO, and like I say, I have the least famous charts that I draw on the whiteboards whenever I'm in a meeting to say, this is the difference that we ought to be sharing. And so, in answer to your question, yes. We have had that discussion, and I see it, and it's based on data. It's not just a gut feeling. It's not just a wish. But I see that it's a very important component of our tax sharing discussions when we talk with the cities. But it's more than just waterways and jail. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there.
Thank you, Mr. Lees.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Hartman.
Mr. Lee's covered it, but Supervisor Kehoe, I do want to stress that not only has Mr. Lees brought it up in his meetings with the city managers, but it was discussed in both of the previous attempts at tax sharing, and I hope that it continues to be, because I share Mr. Lee's concerns of that being a very important issue to resolve.
Supervisor Hollis.
Yes, thank you. We've discussed this numerous times, and the TOT on the houseboats on Shasta Lake, if we could ever get somebody to carry a bill. There's a lot of people that come into our county from other areas, not just California, from Oregon, and our sheriff has to take care of them. I mean, the Oregonians here coming up pretty soon, the college ones are the ones that take the most patrolling, I do believe, right, Sheriff? That we've had some real problems there in the past. So they're all getting by scot-free. Someday, maybe we'll wake up and somehow get that taken care of, because it's a lot of revenue that gets away from us.
Thank you.
Move approval of C16.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The Shasta County Board of Supervisors will recess and convene as the Shasta County Water Agency. The Shasta County Board of Supervisors does not receive any additional compensation or stipend for acting as the Shasta County Water Agency. We have one item. Consider approving a CVP water contract with Mercer Fraser. Mr. Minturn.
Good morning, Chairman Modi, members of the board, Pat Minturn, Public Works Director and Chief Engineer of the Water Agency. Before you today is a relatively minor contract, but it's typical of our water supply contracts with our subcontractors. We have before us a contractor, Mercer Fraser, highway construction contractor, has a contract with Caltrans to do some pavement work on Interstate 5. It says in the report actually that he has a contract to rebuild the I-5 at Antlers Bridge. That's actually not correct, but that is his proposed point of diversion. He's working very nearby. And we have a separate contract actually with the contractor that's doing that work. He needs 1 acre-foot of water, which is a little more than the average family here in Reading uses in a year. So it's a small amount of water. He needs it for dust control and compaction. And so he proposes to go down with a water truck and pull water out of Shasta Lake, and that would be about probably 3,000 gallons in a water truck typically, so there's 300,000 gallons here, so 100 trips down to the lake. And you would think anybody could go down to the lake and take water out, but actually that water has been diverted to storage by the Bureau, and they are tending it, and it is their property for all intents and purposes. They turn around and they make that available to folks who may have need for it. And I think you can appreciate to this contractor that's a real benefit that it's available, and that he has to pay $42 for it is not too onerous. So he has proposed to enter into a contract with us. We have 6 acre-feet that's not allocated to other users, so it works easily for us. This is a 1-year contract. He takes supply based upon what the Bureau allocates as their available water supply this year. As this board's probably aware, the Bureau recently upped the allocation this year to 100%. So he can take his entire 1 acre-foot. And the benefit to the county, aside from the $42 that we will receive, is that this also boosts our record of use. So next year, if there's a cutback to, say, 90%, we'll have to cut 10%, but 1 acre-foot of that will be this guy who is no longer going to be diverting next year. So he helps solidify our base of use. And so that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Mr. Haas has a question, but I have to say I appreciate your very optimistic approach to the $42 and the 1 acre-foot. Mr. Haas.
It's very thorough, but what did it cost us to do this contract?
Exactly.
More than $42.
Yes. Why don't we add that to the cost? I mean, we can't afford to do contracts just for $42, or else we need another way to just do these. I don't know how, but
perhaps our new CEO can come up with a new
way
to handle contracts under $100 or something.
Spend our taxpayers' money here on writing up contracts this fancy for 1 acre-foot of water. That's my opinion, but I'll move approval. I mean, it has to go.
Got a motion to
second.
And a second. Any other discussion, Mr. Bach?
Well, under discussion, can we add on
in this
the additional fee?
Certainly, the board is at liberty to negotiate any terms and conditions you may wish to. The contractor, certainly this water is worth a considerable amount to him. The alternative would be for him to drive down to probably city of Shasta Lake or elsewhere and pick up the water. I would say that it all works out. We have some other contractors who are low maintenance at one time or another, and at other times our costs are far greater. When we renegotiated this contract, we incurred a lot of costs. So the board is at liberty to modify this contract in any way the board wishes. We would have to go back to the contractor, and they would have to agree or disagree.
Perhaps Mr. Lees would like to step in here.
I would like to go forward with approving this contract, but give me the latitude to go back and determine if there isn't an easier way, rather than, I think our first attempt ought to be to find out if we can do it more effectively and efficiently in-house and not raise the cost for contractors in doing business with us. So let me have a shot at seeing if we can't work with county council and go within our policy, even if it means coming back to the water agency and changing some of our policy or procedures. Let's see if we can't do what makes sense and not just roll out an additional cost to somebody else.
Does Lakehead have some kind of a water district there?
There are 2 private water companies in the Lakehead area. They have somewhat limited supplies. I believe they pull out of wells. they would probably be willing to do business with these folks, but the contractor would have to negotiate that on his own.
Well, this is handy. I mean, we don't want to up the price of the contract either, but I think we need to be sensible about these too.
Mr. Baugh?
And I agree with the sensible approach, not with a goal of creating any income, that's not my thought, but covering the public's expense.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Midturn. The Shasta County Water Agency will adjourn and reconvene as the Shasta County Board of Supervisors. We'll start with General Government, R5, receive legislative update. Consider approving a letter to Governor Brown and receive supervisor's report on countywide issues. Mr. Lees.
Thank you, Chairman Modi and members of the board. In your packet today, I have two items. I'm going to talk about the budget and then this request from Senator LaMalfa's office, whereas they're asking us to support SB 1131. Basically, what SB 1131 would allow, if passed, is a cemetery district to provide burial services to a certain number, limited number, of people outside that, who did live outside that cemetery district. The rationale for that is that the districts themselves, there's two reasons. The districts themselves are on shoestring budgets with no opportunity to create revenue to be self-sustaining. And again, they don't make money, but we need them to be at least self-sufficient. With the veteran cemetery coming into northern Shasta County, that has actually depleted a lot of the internments at the local cemetery districts. So what and by law, they're not allowed again to have anybody who had previously lived outside their district buried within their cemetery district. So what this law would do is allow a district the opportunity to receive someone who had not lived within their district. And again, it's a limited number. The second thing, and I think this is of greater value, it gives people a choice. It gives people a choice of, where they feel comfortable, where they want to lay to rest those that have gone. And so I think both things, it made sense to me that we would support this. There's no additional cost to taxpayers or anything like that. So it gives the opportunities for cemeteries to remain whole, while it also gives an opportunity for the public to have a choice where they want to lay their loved ones to rest. And I'd ask for the board's support on this.
And I'd also note that we have in our audience today Arnie Brinton, the administrator of the Anderson and Cottonwood cemeteries, in case the board has any direct questions.
Okay, Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. SB 1131 does not apply to private cemeteries. That's a question.
Correct. I had to think about that. I wanted to make sure I didn't mistake. Yeah, absolutely, because private cemeteries could employ.
Any other?
So I'd look for a motion for acceptance of this approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great. And then the other item I wanted to just talk about as far as our budget. I wanted to give a quick budget update. For those of you who have followed, we are getting very close to the May revise. That is the time when the governor will come out and determine whether or not the projections of what they felt the state revenue would be is coming to fruition. And the short answer is it's not. He actually kind of floated a trial balloon last week when he mentioned that he and his office underestimated the gap that they would have to fill. I always talk about that annual operating gap. He was somewhere around $9 billion, and it's going to end up being around $13 billion. That is just the operating gap. Again, and you've heard me say this many times, I know, but I want to make sure that we keep that in focus. We are not out of the woods. An important part about this is that the revenue is coming in okay. The problem is, over the last year, state expenses have continued to increase, and they increased to the level of about $1.8 billion. So whereas Shasta County 8 years ago curbed their spending to live within their means, the state continues to still overspend. And of course, that's when you heard the famous comment a couple weeks ago where the governor told, and I'm quoting the governor here, told the legislators to man up, which was kind of close to what Governor Schwarzenegger said when he called them, don't be girly men. And so the legislator has to make some tough decisions in order to close this $13 billion gap. Talk in the halls of the Capitol right now, and I find this is very interesting, is that they plan on taking a big chunk out of that gap, maybe up to $2 billion, on the Facebook going public and what they believe they're going to receive from that. In fact, they're actually talking about writing legislation that will already put a fence around any money received from the Facebook offering so that they could utilize that money in a certain area, probably education, to help with the Prop 98 stuff. The reason I share this with you is that there's a significant gap that is yet to be closed by the state, and we all know, we're looking at Prop 109 and the money we expect to get from that. At some point, there is going to be a chance of the state cutting additional funding to counties for different programs. They have to close that $13 billion gap. I'll give you a quick example. What they've tried to do up to this point, kind of betting on revenue will at some point start coming in bigger. They've borrowed money from different pots just to close the annual operating gap. I'm not talking about big bond debts and stuff like that. And what they've done, we've got we've got legislation that was passed, propositions that were passed to build new courthouse. This is just one example. And so all this money has come in to build these new courthouses, and you could argue whether they need them or not, or should or shouldn't. But the state has already borrowed 1.8 or 1.9 billion from that courthouse fund to just help with their general fund annual operating costs. That'll have to get paid back at some point. Somebody's going to, call the question on that. So there's all kinds of gaps that still exist in the state being able to close, to have an operating budget. I think, and we all kind of know it, but we know that the state veterans home that is up here in Shasta County, the bill to fund that has been put in suspense, and I know there's some other things to raise it up again and shorten that time. Supervisor Hartman would know more about this than I am sure, but I suspect that we're going to see that be in play when it comes time for a budget agreement between the legislators in Sacramento. So I share that with you so that you continue to be aware, to know that we're not putting our heads in the sand, that we're keeping an eye on what's going on in Sacramento. And we have asked all the departments, and we'll be presenting a budget to you here shortly. We have asked all the departments to remain and project a flat budget, meaning no increase, no revenue increase from the general fund. And with that, what that means is that actually then those departments have to take cuts because there's natural expenses and PERS, there's health care, things, insurance rates, things like that. So we are continuing, though, and we will bring to you, I'm committed to bring to you a budget that will be within our means and it will not have any borrowing in it. So I'll stop there.
We'll start with Supervisor Keough.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. On behalf of the board, I attended the volunteer recognition reception for the Shasta County Public Libraries, recognized various lengths of service as a volunteer, and 3 individuals were recognized as Volunteer of the Year. From Reading, Mr. Greg Miller, and they provided a little write-up on each one of these awards. So Mr. Greg Miller, representing Reading Library, representing the Anderson Library was Ms. Jan Nutter as Volunteer of the Year, and finally from Bernie, Mr. Frank Wilkins as Volunteer of the Year. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Keough. Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. I'll just extend a short report on RCRC. Officially has, speaking of what's in a name, has changed its name. It is now known as the Rural County Representatives of California, maintaining the RCRC but changing the name, Rural County Representatives of California. It doesn't change the goal or the mission. It only perhaps more closely identifies with the rural county nature. Most people who refer to the agency call it rural counties anyway, so they wanted to start with that title. I think the number one thought that continues to occupy much of the rural county's time is the SRA fees, or I call them illegal taxes, as we go forward on that. Every single county is hoping that they will be the county that actually has someone that receives the first actual bill from the state of California, so that they can hand it in to the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and join in with that eventual lawsuit. It is the feeling that the rural counties of California will prevail in that lawsuit. The truth is, and has been, I mentioned this at our last meeting, is that even the State Board of Equalization reports that should they be successful in collecting those fees, that none of those fees for at least the first year, perhaps the first year and a half or more, would actually go to CAL FIRE. They will go to administrative fees to collect the fees and to set up the system. So I continue to be frustrated in this area, but I know that we all agree that this is a tax perpetuated on us by the state of California, and we'd be happy to oppose this as we already have. Thank you.
Supervisor Hartman.
I'll pass, thank you.
Supervisor Hawes.
Thank you. This Thursday, we will be having the Sacramento River Conservation Area Forum meeting again down in Willows, and I plan to attend that. And last week, I attended the first meeting of the Oversight Committee with redevelopment with the City of Reading. It went very well. And the most important of all was Friday night, our Firefighters Appreciation Dinner down at the Vets Hall. I'll tell you, they do a lot of work for us for very little. It's almost like having a second job with all the training, the many, many, many hours of training they put in. Our 19 volunteer fire departments they're an awesome group. And in talking with Mike Weaver, the state budget is, you know, how it's in such unrest that they're not going to have early funding. So we're going to have to even depend on our volunteers more out there with all of the late rains we're getting now and all the grass that we're growing. It could be a troublesome season for us. So they are awesome. I just wanted to mention that 11 of them got 5-year service awards, 3 got 10-year service awards, 4 got 15-year service awards, and 1 a 25-year service award. So you can just see how dedicated they really, really are. And our firefighter of the year came from our Lakehead Fire Department, Nikki Howard. Very young, full of energy. I tell you, she's even gone on some calls by herself, they said. She can do it all, so we can all be very, very proud. And they had a wonderful meal and good attendance for all that was going on Friday night. So I was very happy and pleased to be there for the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawes. I would like to report that on behalf of the board, I attended the Bella Vista Pump Station dedication for the new fish screens. It was a pretty impressive operation they put together, very effective and a win-win for the pumping station. It's a really modern device that they put in now that will be much easier to operate and certainly will keep the fish out. I attended the curbside chat that was put on by the Citizens for Smart Growth. Along with Supervisor Hartman, attended the Military Order of Purple Heart recognition of our Shasta County deputies for some of the heroism they had here just recently. A couple of different situations involved with deputies who were injured and put at serious risk. Attended the DARE graduation for Happy Valley Elementary. Attended a meeting in French Gulch. Discussed a lot of the issues they have with concerns about water and fire. And on behalf of the board, it was able to represent us at Cool April Nights to pick a car. I picked a 1965 Chevy Chevelle SS and some local owners. It was a great-looking car and one I wish I could have driven around when I was cruising and back in the old days. And finally, again with Supervisor Hartman there, attended the Vets Home ceremonial cornerstone laying yesterday. And obviously nowadays it is a ceremonial service, but it was done by the Masons. It was quite enlightening to see kind of the history of why they've always done this and what the symbolism that's put together during their ceremony, but certainly very respectful of the veterans of our country, spoke well of them, and were very pleased. They had representatives through the entire state, including the head guy from from the state of California up here to do the ceremony. So it was pretty good.
You're a busy guy.
It was. Okay, we will move on to item R6. The Northern Sacramento Valley Integrated Regional Water Management Planning Group ratify memorandum of understanding and appointments. Mr. Minturn.
Chairman Modi, members of the board, Pat Minturn, Public Works Director. Before you today is an item related to our Integrated Water Resource Plan. The board has been engaged in water resource planning in a serious way since 1992, the drought of the late 80s, early 90s. And the local water purveyors came together and they formed the Reading Area Water Council. And so through the 90s, and it culminated in an integrated water resource plan for the Reading Area Water Council, primarily down here in the valley. There are some concerns in the outlying areas of the county, but 90% of the population's down here in the valley, and the big water purveyors are down here in the valley. And so the water resource plan envisioned, first of all, managing our groundwater locally in an integrated fashion with all the other purveyors, the city of Reading, Anderson, Shasta Lake, and planning for long-term supplies. Those purveyors that can draw upon surface water should do so based upon their rights. Those that have groundwater available should draw on this groundwater, and those who do not have anything readily available should plan and to accommodate their needs in the future. And we should all work together in an integrated fashion. We were really ahead of our time in doing that in the late 90s. Now it's all the vogue in California to try to do regional planning because the big projects, the Central Valley Project, the State Water Project, they've run their course. They supply what they can within their respective service areas, but the real solutions are going to be local in the future. And local purveyors such as Cottonwood Water District, though, it's hard for them to bring together the capital and the planning to put together these sorts of long-range plans. So the Reading Area Water Council was that vehicle, and the Water Agency has been the staff to that group. We have been the umbrella organization that has held the contracts with CH2M Hill for these planning functions and so forth. And so it was natural that the Water Agency would continue this pattern. The state legislature, in their wisdom, has made it more and more complicated as they've discovered the beauties of integrated planning. They've put burdens on in terms of elements that need to be included, such as greenhouse gases, global warming, and need for public interaction, which is a good thing, public input, open deliberative process, but it's made it a very elaborate process. The Northern California Water Association, which we belong to, for many years was a kind of the big umbrella organization that took care of those issues and allowed us to do our local planning here without those burdens upon the water districts. Water districts are generally, as you're aware, relatively poor agencies. Money is tight, so the cost of these studies is prohibitive for them. Northern California Water Association has other mandates, though, mostly protecting water resources, water rights, and so they found this burden to be too much for them. So we went searching for another umbrella organization that we could belong to, and we found what was at the time the four-county group, Butte, Tehama, Colusa, and Glenn, who were planning for the Sacramento Valley groundwater basin, Sacramento water. It was more of an agricultural focus than we have, perhaps, but it was very much similar in terms of our region, our climate, the groundwater. Our groundwater basin is separated from the Sacramento Valley groundwater basin, but we're next door neighbors, so we had a lot in common, and they had grants available to do this sort of planning, and they would allow us to continue to do our local planning while taking care of these big picture items. Initially, we said, great, let's join as the Reading Area Water Council. And they indicated that, no, this is a county club. It's appropriate for county agencies to belong. And we were really somewhat saddened because the Reading Area Water Council has been a tight group. The purveyors know as much about water as we do, and in certain cases, they know a lot more. And so we wanted to have Bella Vista and the City of Reading and ACID at the table with us. And we have. The Reading Area Water Council has continued to participate through the county. We've always been very clear, and in the appointments that this board has made, that the Water Agency has made, we've brought up our partners, Stan Wanberg from ACID and city councilman from city of Shasta Lake and from city of Reading, and we've put our partners in there. But ultimately it's the county, and we signed on as the county when we signed the contract with the other agencies. But lo and behold, this board has been meeting as the water agency board as these actions have been taken. And on 5 specific occasions in 2010 and 2011, it was the water agency that made the decisions to join and also to appoint our partners in water to this, the Northern Sacramento Valley governing boards and the advisory boards. And in hindsight, we probably should have taken that action. Staff recommends taking that action as the county, because this is a county club and the other members are all counties. And so it's recommended that the board ratify, as the Board of Supervisors, the action that you same 5 people have taken as the governing board of the water agency. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
We have an opportunity for questions, and I do have a request to speak from the public as well. So I see no questions at this time, Mr. Midterm. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll start with Mr. Gary Cadd, followed by Don Kirk.
Gary Cadd again, member or resident of the county of Shasta, and I'm coming forward on this issue. We got a ball of wax going here. On these 5 states that Mr. Minturn just mentioned, the county of Shasta, acting as the water agency, has moved forward and put things into place. But the only problem with it is the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that joined the Integrated Water Group back in April 27th of 2010, was never signed. And it was supposed to come from the Board of Supervisors, not the water agency. So the Shasta County has not been a member. They've been attending the meetings and interacting with them, but they have not been a member of the Integrated Water Group. So we noticed something that was wrong when we went back and started looking, and we wanted copies of the MOUs. Well, the problem with it was there's 5 of them, and we could not get a copy that had signatures, even if it had 6 counties, had 6 separate pieces where that particular county had signed it. So we knew something was wrong going on with the MOUs. But the MOU very clearly states that participants will be counties, not water agencies. So I would bring forward that on the actual item that was brought before the water agency on April 27th of 2010 makes a statement that Shasta County is one of 11 Reading Area Water Council member agencies. Reading Area Water Council has reviewed and supports the staff recommendation. This was 2 years ago. You think it might be a good idea to go back before you guys take the action you're planning on taking today and go back and ask them again? Because I've been talking to some of these folks and they have no idea what this Integrated Water Group's about, what the 16 standards are that you're going to have to comply with because of Prop 84. The climate change portion of it, Department of Water Resources has a big point in what's going on with this, and they are also coming out with a new handbook on climate change that will be have to go through with this whole issue. And I don't have more than 3 minutes to be able to stand here and really go through this issue. It'd be nice if somebody asked a question to prompt so we could talk more about it. But my recommendation is to not take this issue today, go back before the Reading Area Water Council, which the folks tried to make a meeting, put a meeting together, but just their TAC committee here a couple of weeks ago, that didn't work. And then at your last meeting, you brought an issue up that you wanted to look at the goals and objectives from this regional group that are nothing more at the moment than a rough draft of a subcommittee. So I think we're pushing forward here, and I think we need that this issue needs to see the light of day. And the Reading Area Water Council, who was originally signed on with this, we can't take it for granted that they're going to be a part of this. You need to ask them. You need to have a meeting, public meeting, and their board come forward, and we need to get an answer of whether they still want to be a member of this. So my recommendation is to table this issue and go back and straighten out a problem that was caused 2 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Cadd, do you have a list of what you're referring to in the way of the 16 standards?
Yes, I do. I don't have them with me, but I can send you a copy of the Prop 84 1E guidelines, which clearly state and how you have to abide by them. I could email that to you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Kirk, followed by Terry Raposo.
First of all, I agree with Mr. Cadd 100%, but as well, on that letter a couple weeks ago that you was talking about doing, Mr. Hawes was saying that we had no representation. Well, if we were members of it, which I oppose, the members that we have would actually be our representation. You know, so I mean, we don't need to add extra people on top of that for representation. I also believe that because of the actions that have happened in the past, there a lot of the stuff that has been passed, whoever on this, may not be legal, and it may have to be all looked at and redone. Thank you very much, and as I say, I do oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Mr. Raposa, followed by Sally Raposa.
Good afternoon. On Wednesday, several people from the area, several people from Fresno, ended up being 500 people went to Sacramento. And they went in and they lobbied for and got the money and pushed a little bit, 500 people, to get the veterans the money they needed for their home. The same day, that evening in Shingletown, 20 people showed up at a school board meeting. That same evening, in Trinity County, the Trinity County Patriots started their sheriff symposium, which they're going to have on May the 19th, to bring in the constitutional sheriffs. The next day, in the morning, several people from here went to the water meeting that we're discussing now, the TAC meeting, went and discussed what was going on there. At the same time, there was a tea party started in Ukiah, where we spoke to a standing room only crowd that broke off into Willits, and then again off into Lakeport County. That evening, there was a situation in Siskiyou County where the Shasta Commons, which is a liberal group, started to work with the Tea Party up there, and now there's people that understand Agenda 21 is affecting all of us. The next thing that happened is on Friday, there was a meeting called the Eagle Forum down in Sacramento, which hundreds of people went to, that talked about Agenda 21 and different things that their city councils and that their Board of Supervisors are doing. On that next day, Saturday, in Modoc, there was a sheriff's symposium with 400 people. Now, the reason I went through that is there was around 1,000 people involved in their government where they wouldn't have been 3 years ago. And they're watching what's going on. And I think what we want is the truth. I've been to the TAC meetings. We've filmed the TAC meetings. The people on the board that are on that committee don't even know what's in the proposition. They're being told what's going on by the people in the audience, as Mr. Cadd said. There's no accountability. They're all ignorant of the subject. We have people that are saying they're at meetings, which in fact is a lie. They're not there. We have all kinds of things going on. And to me, I think we just want the truth out of our elected officials. Mr. Baugh and I had a little discussion about that last night. And I think it's something that we have to start looking at. We're tired of a situation where our supervisors aren't really looking out for our best interest. We have to come to these things all the time. I'd like to come to one and just hear a bunch of positive stuff. But, you know, we're not hearing that. And I think the thing is that we have to realize that, you know, first of all, we don't take money from jobs before we have them. You know, we don't have situations where we say we're somewhere and we're not. We don't elect committees, and we don't have people on a board that have no information. And when people in an audience are more informed than the people making the ruling, that's a travesty. I think we're all tired of it. And I just want you guys to hear what Mr. Cadd said and take it under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raposa. Sally